What does victory look like? It's a question that Israel should think about. On October 7, the whole world was with them, even Arab states. There was sympathy, there was grief, there was genuine support. Such was the brutality of the Hamas attack. But 68 days later, that is not the case. The global sentiment has changed, and in many ways, India is the best example of it. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was among the first to release a statement on October 7th. He condemned the attack. He supported Israel's right to self-defense. But now things have changed. On Tuesday, the United Nations General Assembly, the UNGA, voted on a resolution. It called for a ceasefire in Gaza. 153 countries voted in support for it. They supported a ceasefire. And among them was India. It's a clear shift in policy. A similar resolution had been proposed in October as well, calling for a ceasefire. Back then, India had abstained. New Delhi did not support or reject it in October. So what has changed this time? Listen to what India's United Nations envoy had to say.
There is an enormous humanitarian crisis and the large-scale loss of civilian lives, especially of women and children. There is the issue of observing international humanitarian law in all circumstances. And there is the endeavor to find a peaceful and lasting two-state solution to the long-standing Palestine question. We therefore welcome the fact that the international community has been able to find a common ground to address the multiple challenges facing the region right now.
So two concerns. One is the loss of civilian lives. More than 18,000 people have been killed in Gaza. Around 40% of them were children. And two, upholding humanitarian laws. We've seen airstrikes on hospitals, reports of forced starvation, and of course, collective punishment. So India has said, enough is enough. It's time to implement a ceasefire in Gaza. And it's not just New Delhi. The entire world wants Israel to stop the war now. Let's compare the two resolutions of the United Nations General Assembly. One was in October, the other was yesterday. Both of them called on Israel to stop the fighting. In October, 120 countries voted in favor. 45 countries abstained. But yesterday, the numbers were much higher. 153 countries wanted a ceasefire. That's 80% of all UNGA members, plus only 23 countries abstained from voting. What does that tell you? That Israel is losing the narrative war, and not for lack of trying. Their diplomats at the United Nations have tried multiple strategies. In October, they came wearing yellow stars. It was a symbol used by the Nazis to identify Jews. And yesterday, they tried something else. Take a look.
I have an idea. If you want a real ceasefire, here is the right address. This is the phone number of Hamas's office in Gaza. You can all call +970 599 3765 and ask for Yihya Sinwar. Tell Hamas to put down their arms, turn themselves in, and return our hostages. This will bring a complete ceasefire that will last forever.
No luck. Two amendments were pushed by United Nations members. Both of them tried to add a mention of Hamas to the resolution. Both were shot down. So the message to Israel is clear. We understand the pain caused by the Hamas attack, but killing Gazan civilians is not the answer. Now the question is, will Israel listen? Well, General Assembly resolutions are non-binding. Israel ignored the one in October, and they're doing the same thing again this time. They say the war will continue with or without global support. The only one who can stop them is the United States. If Joe Biden wants to, he can pull the plug. But will he do it? In recent days, US officials have criticized Israel. They've talked about protecting civilians in Gaza. Even President Joe Biden has joined in. He spoke at a campaign event on Tuesday, and he said some very blunt things about Israel. Let me quote from what his speech was. Israel has most of the world supporting it, but they are starting to lose that support by the indiscriminate bombing that takes place. This is Joe Biden saying. Netanyahu is a good friend, but he has to change. He's got to make some moves to strengthen the Palestinian Authority. Now, these are sharp remarks. But at the United Nations, Biden keeps defending Israel. Even yesterday, only 10 countries voted against a ceasefire. The United States was one of them. All of their allies have shifted positions. The Canadians, the Germans, the Australians. Only Washington is stubbornly defending Israel. The question is why? Reports say Biden has given Netanyahu a deadline, the end of 2023. So around 18 days more. By then, he wants Israel to wrap up the war. But frankly, 18 days is a lot. Netanyahu is already under a lot of domestic pressure. The relatives of hostages want him to negotiate. Only yesterday, 2 Israeli hostages were found dead in Gaza. With each passing day, that number could rise. But Netanyahu is not shaken. He admits that there are differences with the US, but he also says the war will go on.
Yes, there is disagreement about the day after Hamas, and I hope that we will reach agreement here as well. I would like to clarify my position. I will not allow Israel to repeat the mistake of Oslo. I will not allow the entry into Gaza of those who educate for terrorism, support terrorism, and finance terrorism. Gaza will be neither Hamastan nor Fatahstan.
That's a defiant war cry. But Netanyahu needs to remember the age-old rule of war. Victory on the battlefield is not enough. You must win the political battle too. What's the use of destroying Hamas if Israel is left isolated, if more enemies pop up elsewhere? We know there's a politician and a military man inside Benjamin Netanyahu. The question is, who is doing the thinking?